hit the wrong button, or at least I didn't change what was assigned to the intro before I hit go live. I'm switching between two different platforms every stream, and it's a little confusing, but thank you for bearing with me. Welcome this morning, this Sunday morning, lovely morning, to my channel. My name is Margaret Pinard. I'm a historical fiction and fantasy author. I practice what I preach. I read a lot here. We read eclectic books, including a lot of nonfiction, which I'm excited to talk with you about today. But what I used for my intro is actually the reveal for my title. So Orla Rafferty Seeks Her Fortune is the title of my new book coming out on November 30th. Ebook cover is locked down. We're working on the paperback cover right now. All very exciting. But today, we're not focusing on AuthorTube, we're focusing on Booktube with a book tag. So, I have so many books to recommend with this tag. I will say it is an original tag by Hannah from Hannah's Books. So way to go, Hannah. I think it might be like a year ago now that you did this. But November is coming up. It's 2 weeks away, and Nonfiction November is sort of a thing. So even if this is Olive's last year for hosting the readathon, I'm pretty sure we'll go on to make tags and basically feature nonfiction books. What I think I might do is feature certain types of nonfiction if we're going to go off the rails. So that'll be fun, and stay tuned. I think next week, next Sunday's stream is going to feature my nonfiction November recommendations and TBR. So stay tuned for that. But today it's the tag, and I was tagged by Melissa at Fully Booked, who I'm sure despaired of my ever doing this tag because it's taken so long, but I saved it for the exact right moment. So, you know. Let's see. We've got Jocelyn Carter in the chat early to say hello. How are you doing, Jocelyn? We've got Anita, AF Stewart, hello, welcome. And Jim, hola. Jim's feeling Spanish today. I like it. What have we here for our prompts? We've got, I don't know, about a dozen prompts, and I've got a lot of answers. So maybe like 10 prompts. I'm reading 2 at a time here. Okay. The first one is, what was your first experience reading nonfiction? And my answer here, is influenced by the fact that I don't remember until I'm pretty old, until, I don't know, like first grade, which is when you're like 6. So my young memories are pretty sketchy. I'm sure I was being read to at that time. And I was like reading maybe by like 2nd grade. I don't remember reading in 1st grade, but definitely reading by 2nd grade. And this is why I remember it, because it was religious. So I remember we had these wide red books for reconciliation as a process. It was like a thing you went through before you could get your first communion. So my first remembered nonfiction reading is religious. Either the small book of saints where we had, I mean, I'm sure that was later, but I had a small book of like saints' lives, which I remember looking at and like appreciating the names basically, and like wanting to be named Cecilia. But the first communion book is the first book I remember reading that was nonfiction. So, but you know what else I was thinking of, and this came up on a live stream last week when I was preparing for this tag, is that one of the other things I remember that was nonfiction in grade school that we had access to were books about the American presidents. And it was a series, and I was trying to remember the name because it was a very specific series. And I was like, American Heritage. I'm like, no, it's not that. That's a magazine. They were hardcover books. They had like a very fancy, for a kid, like very fancy presentation. And I finally remembered it, just like I told, I think it was Leslie's live stream. Last week, I was like, I'm going to remember this in a dream, and then I'll wake up and tell you. And that's exactly what happened. The title of the publication series was Funk and Wagnalls. Sounds like a law firm, doesn't it? Funk and Wagnalls American President series. So that is one of the first nonfiction series of books that I remember. Don't blame me. Don't blame me. You can't choose your parents and your school. It's just what I was brought up with. So the second prompt: has reading a work of nonfiction ever brought you to tears? Oh gosh, yes. So, I have some recent ones that I remember. So we're going from childhood, early memories to like the most recent, which is a significant amount of time has passed. And I've got a couple here that I remembered right off the bat. So let's see. I had 1, 2, 3, 4. 4. And I have 3 in my hand because one is a library book. So the most recent is this one called Shopkeeping: Stories, Advice, and Observations. It's a very pretty book I got in a stationery store. It's by Peter Miller, bookseller. And I picked this up randomly and read through it and found, as you will remember if you follow the channel, found that there were lots of parallels between being a bookseller, even with an architecture bookshop, and being a writer selling books. So what brought me to tears was the really sincere desire that this bookseller had to provide a service to his community and connect with people and bring these beautiful books to their attention and create an environment that made it a pleasant experience. Excuse me a second. And how that parallels with the writer's experience of wanting to bring down a story that they're inspired by and share it with other people and have them feel that same feeling, and how it's terrifying to risk sharing that and then not have people connect with it in the same way that like you have a small business, and if enough people don't connect with you, you go out of business and you're doomed. So that made me cry. That was a good one. Brought me to tears. The second one I had was this golden oldie, 84 Charing Cross Road by Helene Hanff, which I only read like last year. And I found the sequel and ordered it off of Blackwell's, I think. So I'm very excited to read the sequel. But this is a book in letters between a woman in New York City it was published in 1970. Was it started in the 40s or like late 40s, I think? So at the end of World War II, there was rationing. There was a lot of things that were hard to get, even in New York City. And this woman, Helene Hanff, was looking for specific books. So she wrote to someone who could source books, which was in London. And over the years of asking for different books and supplying them, they became friends through the post, and just shared lots of close things. And so this was a glorious book to read, and a little sad. So if you're ready for that, I definitely recommend it. These are 5-star nonfiction books. Together. So this is one. Wait, no. The Heat Will Kill You First. This was a library book. The Heat Will Kill You First: Life and Death on a Scorched Planet. That is a book about climate change and its effects and its immediate effects, and the fact that we're already in like the second wave. We've got extinctions, we've got weather events, we've got acidification, we've got sea level rise, we've got glacier melt. Like it's already happening, it's not coming. So some of the personal stories that I'm not going to remember this guy's name, who's a great journalist, Jeff Goodell. Some of the personal stories that Jeff Goodell drills down to are really affecting, and he can write about them really well. So that brought me to tears. The next one I had was Together, which is on Libro.fm, so an audiobook: Why Social Connection Holds the Key to Better Health, Higher Performance, and Greater Happiness. And this is by a doctor named Vivek H. Murthy. And that book was, I think it probably brought me to tears because it talks about community, and it talks about the lack of community, and having released it during the pandemic and being and being a person talking about loneliness and how that's an epidemic and how we're all isolated, like that really hit home. So that was really well done and lots of great points. And then the final one I have in my hot little hands, All We Can Save. You've heard about this before from me on my channel, Truth, Courage, and Solutions for the Climate Crisis. And this is a collection of short works by people that are nonfiction as well as some poetry, because people are expressing their experience of climate change and the sadness and grief over it and the anxiety in different ways. And some of them are resilient, like stories of success, and some of them are more grief centered. And so some of these poems brought me to tears, as well as the personal stories. So I should read this again soon. So that's five nonfiction books I can think of like that brought me to tears. Really, really good. Prompt number 3. Oh, okay. This is one I didn't write an answer down for. So while I have time to make my brain think about this, I'll say hello to the chat again. This is a better time. Yeah, the morning is better for those in Georgia. Shannon is back. Back from her conference, stopping by to say hi and hit the like button. Yeah, it's a busy day today. Nice to see you, Shannon. Jim says, I had a Ladybird books of explorers like Christopher Columbus and Marco Polo. Yeah, I bet it's funny to go back and see what they say now, because they're probably so, what is it? Whitewashed, naive. Like when you simplify things for children, it's just, some of the things are just like wrong. I think we'd have that attitude looking back on them today. Hi, JC. Nice to see you. Jim says, has the reading of a work of nonfiction, Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, was very sad. I rarely cry. Oh, okay. So Jim's answer for that question about bring you to tears, Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee is the I can't remember their last name. Classic book. I haven't read it yet. I think I might have tried last year, but I think I've set my heart on Heartbeat of Wounded Knee instead, because it's a native author rather than the author of that one. And they're both big chunkers. So I feel like if I'm going to read about the same massacre and after effects, like I'm going to choose the indigenous one first. Emma Bennett, hi. Welcome, author releasing a book this week. Lovely to see you. Emma's concurring. The Ladybird books are nice. Nice. Okay, let's see if my brain came up with an answer for prompt number 3. Are there any people that have played a significant role in your nonfiction journey? Well, the first ones that I read were due to the school that I went to. So definitely parents. I'm going to talk about some of the genres that I have in nonfiction, and then it'll be sort of make more sense to wrap who influenced me into those genres. So I'll leave that for a later question. Prompt number 4. Do you enjoy documentaries? Do you have a favorite? Is there a subject you'd like to see discussed on film? That is, what should Ken Burns' film be next? So I don't watch too many documentaries. I don't watch too many movies. I watch them every now and then on Netflix or YouTube, but probably like 3 a year. There were a few really great nature documentaries. There are a few American culture documentaries that I watched, like about what's the new term? The Redeemed Five? I can't remember. The 5 teenagers that were convicted for the Central Park case who were let out when it was discovered they were innocent, or when it was proven they were innocent. That was a powerful series of documentaries. There were several. There was like a fictional one, and there was like a real one with interviews. That was really good. The David Attenborough documentary about plants, that was really good. There was another one that was about plants that was time-lapse photography that really affected me. It showed how plants look in fast motion. So if you think of humans and how they move, and then you kind of speed up how plants move. They've got intent, they've got drive, they've got it. Like, it's interesting. It affects how you perceive them. Like when I was looking at vines and how they kind of go around and, oh, I found something, I'm gonna wrap around it, there we go. Or like they throw out suckers to try to find soil to put more roots into. Like, it was very eye-opening. So nature and culture documentaries, but it's not very many, 2 to 3 a year, maybe. I don't have a TV. I mean, I have a TV, but it's on the floor and it's attached to a VCR. So prompt number 5. Yeah. Have you read a biography about or memoir of a person with whom you identify? Okay, so I'll use these two. I'm just gonna blank on her name. There's another channel, and now I'm blanking on her name. But she was just talking about Robert McFarlane and how this book and Underland were totally boring, and she couldn't concentrate on them. And I think I might have recommended them to her. So, yeah. I identified with the sort of wanderer soul of this type of book, right? Or this one. So when I read these books, like, they really resonated. This one a long time ago. It's Wanderlust by Rebecca Solnit. She's exploring the nonfiction, the history of people walking. What did it mean? Where did they go? How did they travel? How did we evolve? Like, every aspect. And it was really cool. It's one of those books that I like, that I don't have a name for, that takes one thing and then like looks at it from all different points of view, which is really cool. I don't know that I identify with Rebecca Solnit. She's much more of like a iconoclast, or like a person who speaks on everything, than I could ever be. But this book in particular, one of her early ones, really hit me. Robert McFarlane in this one, I mean, it's similar. It's talking about walking, talking about travel, but it's talking about specific locations and cultures, and just giving a shorter glimpse into those more specific places, and talking about how where people went and their daily lives influenced the landscape, and how the landscape influenced the culture, and how it was a relation between the people and the land. And I just really liked that, especially because he goes into Scotland. And yeah, so I've enjoyed hearing his sort of like deeper meditations about our connection to the land and through history. So that's a great one for me, obviously not for everybody. And then this one, it's called Without Reservations by Alice Steinbach, and she was a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist in Baltimore. And she wrote this book that was like about her retirement and her life after, excuse me again, life after raising her children, and her husband either passed away or they divorced. I can't remember. But it was sort of rediscovering herself and allowing herself to think about her interactions with people differently. And I feel like I sort of got that after college. And so I liked a lot of where her mind was going in terms of challenging herself and trying to be open and kind, and to herself as well as other people. So I really, really liked that. The Travels of an Independent Woman. So I liked her later memoirs. I don't know much about her journalism because it was before I was aware. So that was 5. Read aloud a short passage you love from a work of nonfiction. And I didn't do this ahead of time. That was another one I left empty. Let's see if I can pull something out of one of the books that I pulled off the shelf, though. Let's see. Oh, here's a good one. It's from Gathering Moss by our very favorite Robin Wall Kimmerer. Oregonians, and I am living in the state of Oregon, seem to have a love-hate relationship with their mosses. On the one hand, there's a certain civic pride among folks who label themselves mossbacks. I've never heard that. And cheer for teams with aquatic mascots, beavers and ducks. On the other hand, moss eradication is big business. Hardware stores stock shelves of chemicals with names like Moss Out, Moss Begone, and X Moss. An ad campaign on Portland billboards read, "Small, green, fuzzy, kill it." These chemicals eventually end up in the streams and in the food chain of threatened salmon. And the mosses always come back. Roofing professionals have led homeowners to believe that mosses lead to degradation of the shingles and eventually to leaks. For an annual fee, they will gladly remove them. Allegedly, the moss rhizoids penetrate tiny cracks in the shingles and accelerate their deterioration. However, there is no scientific evidence to support or refute this claim. It seems unlikely that microscopic rhizoids could pose a serious threat to a well-built roof. One technical representative for a shingle company acknowledges that he's never seen any damage by mosses. Why not just let them be? So one of my favorite nonfictions is the last few years, Gathering Moss, a natural and cultural history of mosses. I love moss. So there's that. That was prompt number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, number 7. Let me check in with the chat in case anyone has questions. D. Brown, thank you. That's right. JC says, congratulations to Emma on A Scottish Christmas coming out Wednesday. Jim says, Supersize Me is a documentary I showed and discussed with a few students. Yeah, that would probably be a good one because you get to see cultural differences between America and other places, and then they get to hear the American English. That was a long time ago, that book. I don't remember. I mean, I think the documentary was pretty old too. Yeah, big cultural impact. Anita says, When the Levees Broke was a powerful documentary about Hurricane Katrina. All right, it's a good recommendation. I have the best books. I do have the best books. Thank you, Emma. Next prompt then. Do any works of nonfiction intimidate you? Which ones and why? Oh, Jim's going to love this one. I hope everything doesn't collapse. Ta-da! Jim has read this book. I started it like 2 years ago and got halfway and then was like, it's too much. Look at this. I got through to page 296 and except for the notes, taking out the notes, how many are there? 590, 603, 600 pages. So I'm like basically exactly halfway and I was just like, I can't. Eventually, if I do want to follow up and have a story set in Australia in the 19th century, I will have to finish this. But like the beginning stuff was so rough and so detailed. Robert Hughes, what are you doing? So yeah, definitely intimidating. Definitely intimidating. I was looking at my shelf for other huge books or just this subject that intimidates. London, A Social History. I don't know why. I haven't cracked it open. I've had it for years. Victorian Cities by Asa Briggs. I've read lots of things that quote it, that reference it, and I'm sure there will be some like cross-pollination, but I haven't read it. A recent book that I got that I started and that's just way too negative is Empire of Illusions by Chris Hedges, and I can't seem to continue that one, so that's intimidating me. And then another big one is Walking with the Wind about Congressman Lewis. So like these sort of epic ones that are really long. They are a bit intimidating. But eventually we'll get there. Next prompt. What tips would you give to people hesitant to read nonfiction? So if you're hesitant to read because you're intimidated, find a smaller book, find a different subject. If you're hesitant to read because you've read nonfiction and you don't like it, here's my advice. Change the tone or register until you find one you like. or pick a topic that you already like, because I'm sure that something has been written about it, or try a different format. So those are 3 different things where you can keep searching for something that might fit, right? So if you say, I don't like jeans, I don't wear jeans, it's kind of like there's so many different kinds of jeans that, like, surely one of them would be something that you would like, right? Like, doesn't have to be bell bottoms, doesn't have to be low riders, doesn't have to be super tight. Like, there's all different kinds of jeans. So the first thing I said was change the tone or register. So Fatal Shore, if I can remember from 2 years ago, the tone of the book was like someone looking back, talking about details of everyday life, quoting letters of sailors, quoting government documents, court documents. There was a lot of like old-timey language, let's say, as well as a little bit of judgment in terms of how enlightened the people were who made these decisions and enacted these policies, etc. So it wasn't narrative nonfiction. It wasn't like someone was trying to invite me in. So that's a little bit contributing to the never going back. But what you can do is, if you read nonfiction and find that the tone is turning you off and you just can't take it, then I would say, like, pick something else up and read a sentence. So if I read a sentence from the memoir that I really loved, on the morning of our last day together in London, Shelby and I lingered over coffee, talking about our plans. He and his group were on their way to Scotland, where Shelby planned, among other things, to do some research on our family's Scottish heritage. I was staying on in London, but within a week or so would leave for Oxford. It's not a great random thing, but it's very conversational. It's not needless detail. Like, it's very different from The Fatal Shore and how he relates the events of the 18th century where he starts, or earlier. So just try a different tone. Like, pick up any nonfiction book and read a sentence, read another sentence, pick a different tone or register. The second tip is pick a topic you already like. So if you like travel, find a travel book. If you like nature, find a nature book. If you like Olympics facts, find a book on Olympic athletes. Like, there is a nonfiction book for everything, which is why when you say you don't like nonfiction, it's kind of like saying you don't like life. Nonfiction is reality. Okay, some of us don't like reality, but, like, what are you doing here? That's my attitude. If you don't like nonfiction, how can you, what? So I love nonfiction, but not all nonfiction, right? I've got the things that I like, just like things that I like in the world. I don't like everything in the world. There are the nichiest niches, folks. I will go through when I go through the genres and show you some pictures, but yeah, that's the second tip. Third tip is try a different format. So if the way you are trying to access nonfiction is not accessible, like you're falling asleep, or it's putting you to sleep, or like your eyes are going cross-eyed, or like you cannot focus, it's so boring, try a different format. Maybe ebooks would be helpful. Maybe audiobooks would be helpful with a good narrator. So, like, don't just do this once. Give a couple, maybe even 3 different narrators a try. Not with the same book, like, obviously, but like with different nonfiction topics. I have read some really good nonfiction audiobooks, and the narrators are a big part of that. So I will be highlighting them next Sunday with my Nonfiction November recommendations. So be sure to tune in for those if you think the format might help you. All right, so those are my tips, advice. Favorite works of nonfiction is where I'm going to bring in the genre photos. So let me check in here. Jim says The Fatal Shore is a great read. It's fine. It's fine. The history is fascinating. It's just not in pursuit of anything. It's not specific to what I need right now. So it's like reading about pirate life in 1806 when I'm writing a book about the World War II. Like, it's not helpful. Hi, Brian. Bookish says, I have a couple of works of academic history where the writing is intimidating. Is MacArthur's Bloody Butchers an intimidating book, would you say? I don't know. Has anyone read it? Let's hear. Yeah, Emma says, I get that. Bookish. I just got a new bio of Congressman Lewis. Oh, okay. Wait, did I see the cover of that recently? I may have for the audiobook magazine. I have an old one. It's very big, and it's one of the ones that was like cracked spine. So it's not going to be a great reading experience physically, but I think it's supposed to be really good in terms of biographical information. And his life is amazing, so I'm looking forward to it. It's just big. Jim said, and he lived for so long and through so much. That's the thing. Like, you're going to be going through someone's whole life. That's why I don't normally read biographies. It's like so much to take in. Jim says there are a lot of comedy travelogues, which are fun nonfiction reads, like Around Ireland with a Fridge. I never read that one. Is that Tony somebody? But it's a great concept. And I remember looking at it several times going, should I get this? I don't know. That's probably like a decade ago. That's a good one. Travel is one of my genres, so we'll come up on that. I would say no, it's not intimidating. Brian had a release of a book maybe 4 weeks ago now. So we've got 2 new release authors in the chat. Love it. Congratulations. Maybe we'll get a third and make it a triumvirate. So let me share this screen. Hi, Dega. Welcome. Share my screen here and make sure I can see. Can I do the full screen thing? Does that help a little bit? Yeah. Okay. So is this the last one or the first one? It's the last one. We're going to start at the top so that I can just scroll down here. Okay. So what I did for this about, like, what does it say? What are your favorite works of nonfiction? So I took pictures of all my shelves full of nonfiction. And the thing here is the way I organize my books at the moment is books I've read in the back layer that you can't read, and books that I have yet to read in the front layer. So they stare me in the face and guilt me into picking them up. Sort of. So all these pictures are going to show you the books I haven't read, but when I go over them, I'm going to give you representative samples of my favorite books in these genres. So starting on this shelf, I've got, no, this is a mix of a shelf. So let's see. We've got Rebecca Solnit. We've got hiking. We've got travel. We've got culture. It's a mix. Caitlin Moran, Madeline L'Engle, The Black Count, and there's the John Lewis book, right? And Scarp. So this is a mix, but I'm gonna call it like travel / ecology, and then some history on the side, because it's hard to find places for books in my house. I don't know if this has occurred to anyone. And I've got some books that I've pulled out of there. So let's keep going till there's one that's more like coherent. Okay, so this one is the bookshelf that is normally self-help. The self-help and psychology stuff is mostly in the back. So we've got culture, we've got philosophy, which is a very small section of my library. We've got history, more environment, and some self-help. Like The Renaissance Soul is a great one for finding out how you want to organize your life work kind of thing. And no one get excited about the Herbert Marcuse there, because that's from college. I don't know why I haven't let it go. I feel like I don't know what that is. But okay, here are some. I mean, why do I have 4 from this shelf? Because these are some of my favorites that shaped me. So favorites that shaped me. This is in the back of that shelf. The Art of Nonconformity by Chris Guillebeau. So The Art of Nonconformity, AONC, is a book that helped birth 10 years of conferences. I think it's around 10 of the World Domination Summit, WDS. And that is part of the reason why I moved here to Portland after leaving Washington, D.C., because this guy had created a community that was coming together every summer in Portland, Oregon, to celebrate how people don't have to do the 9-to-5 office job, how people can find ways to create community, make the world a better place their own way. And, they shouldn't be looked down on for finding a different path. And so this really opened up a different life path for me. So I really credit Chris Gilbo community with that, and, probably changed my life. This is another one in the back of that shelf. It's called How to Not Always Be Working by Marley Grace. This is a much more recent edition. It's a cute little book, smaller than my head, and it's got little illustrations. It's got like a workbook, and it says a toolkit for creativity and radical self-care. So I think this is at the beginning of the pandemic, so not influenced by it, but I read it probably like 2019-ish. Let's see, when did it come out? Don't be a liar. 2018. So I think I did. I got this new. So I was right. Wow. So if I read this in 2019, I was just coming out with my 5th book, and I was just losing my bookseller position because the bookstore went out of business. And I was considering, okay, well, I need to find a job that will complement being an author. But I was also questioning a lot of being an author things. And so this attitude of the attitude is the hustle isn't everything, right? The grind is not the purpose of your life. Try to find a different center. Try to ground yourself in something else besides your worth to other people. And that is a lot of why I've read a lot of self-help in the past 10 years. It's because it's trying to reorient myself to something that is not so externally validation centered in a business that is very alone and isolating, but dependent on external validation for sales. And it's a hard position. So this was a book that helped a little bit on that front. This is a super early one. So between Chris Gillibo and Marley Grace is Alan Watts, who some of you might have heard of. He's old school. He's like from the 60s and 70s. He was a big speaker on the circuit, and he's got a few viral sounds that are on TikTok these days. This is one of his more popular books called The Book on the Taboo Against Knowing Who You Are. And he was very much like counterculture, studied Buddhism, and like was really about peeling back the layers of what society teaches us to be, and kind of like Chris Gillibo teaches, finding your own path and like really trying to figure out what you think before you're trained in what other people think, if that makes sense. So the taboo against knowing who you are. And I just found this to be really eye-opening. So that was a favorite in that genre. And then this one more recently, The Body Keeps the Score. And it might be controversial because I read somewhere afterwards that the author, Bessel van der Kolk, is somewhat controversial because some of it was invalidated, but I think his ideas and his research and his approach are more than maybe what was invalidated. And so I think this is still a really valuable book to read. Brain, Mind, and Body and the Healing of Trauma. So this is exploring the notion that people who experience trauma, it lodges itself in the body and can be part of why people have disease and discomfort and, chronic pain or whatever. And so one of the things I learned, I think before this, but then this book made me remember it, is that psychology, therapy was pretty, what's the word I'm looking for? Common, or like, not highly regarded, but like common and dispensed and part of a routine for people who had trauma or were seeking help for things. And in like from the 1950s, 1960s, it became more so. But then in the 70s, when research started to go into drugs and things that were changing people's brain chemistry, they sort of shortcutted to that because that was much more profitable. And it was sort of a divergence of medical treatment, and how this author thinks that both ways need to be utilized to have effective treatment, because we're not looking at the whole person. We're just looking at one piece, and that doesn't get at the actual cause and all this kind of stuff. So I really liked it. There are still no answers in terms of like consciousness and our brain body connection. Like I don't understand if there's conclusions, if there are, but it helped to sort of think of things differently. And so I just really like that. And I think some of the stories in here are really moving. This brought me to tears. Some of it is scary. Some of it is like a little traumatic. Obviously he's talking about people's experiences, and those can be upsetting. So like, if you're really curious, I would definitely recommend the book, and just say like, don't read it before bedtime kind of thing. But yeah, so psychology and self-help, those are the sort of directions. And maybe that's not what you think of when you think of psychology or self-help, but like, I thought those books were really relevant and comforting and eye-opening, as I said. So I don't look down on this genre, and I don't think other people should either. There's my little rant. Let's see. So the horizontal books are the ones that just have gotten stuffed on the bookcase, but yeah, not self-help. But I don't know. I think it may have come back from a readathon. I didn't end up reading it, so it's still in the front and mixed in with the other stuff. Richard is here. Hello. Brian says, I think I read The Watercourse Way by Watts, which is not one I've heard of. I think I've read 3 or 4 by Alan Watts, and that is not one I've heard of. Let me know if you liked it, or like if you can remember what the main idea was, because I am very impressed with his work, and like some of it's way out there, but I love it because he makes you think, I think. Richard likes the flag. Yeah. It's actually signed, which I don't know is considered defacing it, but it's from a musical that I went to where I was called up on stage and all the actors signed it because it was a little like prop for the show. It was fun. Brian says, I'm not sure if I read that Watts book because I was a little too into certain counterculture activities. Oh, really? Okay. Okay. So let me go back to that app and go down one. The next one is, let me go into my notes. So travel, nature. Oh, I didn't do this in order, did I? So here we've got sociology, race, economy, and some history that, again, is sort of stuffed in there. So sociology books, what does that mean? They're not textbooks. If you look at Next Stop Reloville, what the heck is that about, right? That is about the phenomenon of people who relocate and have like cookie cutter lifestyles because they live in a corporate environment where they're just moved to wherever they need to be. And that influences how we plan our cities and how we have our services arranged. So it's a little bit like urban planning-ish, but also like, how is the work world organized for this section of the economy? So it's a little bit economy. And I love the stuff that sort of gets at things relating to each other. So that's that. We've got the Eric Hobsbawm. So whenever Gareth wanders in, like he'll be like honing in, so zeroing in on that one. The Great Disruption, like this is about the changes in economy that we're going through, like money, all this kind of stuff. I still haven't read the new Jim Crow. It's on the shelf. But yeah, so like culture studies like that. The Watercourse Ways was about Taoism. Okay, that makes sense. I haven't heard of it. That's cool though. Political economy. Okay, let's go down another one for I think history. Yep. There's a little mister in case anyone recognizes that. So history, like lots of history. Again, ignore the horizontal ones. Talking about women, talking about community, talking about race riots, talking about insurrections, talking about fascism. I actually have read that book. There's The Heartbeat of Wounded Knee that I want to read. And there's more sociology books about cities and growth and that kind of thing. So love it. What else do I have? Travel. So this is the shelf that is just for travel. It's got maps. It's got travel guides that are outdated now that we all use Google Maps. It's got map guides. So the ones with the spiral rings are like actual map books, some for Britain, some for Europe, some for the US, maybe. Atlas of the British Empire. So like things where you can look at what were the boundaries in different time periods. I love that kind of stuff. Road maps. And then I've also got architecture mixed in with this because it's architecture of different places. So we've got some Paris and we've got some Ireland. It's all sort of random because it's subject based where they are. But yeah, architecture, art, and maps and travel. Some travel goes in here. This is like nostalgia travel. This is stuff I don't use, but I want to keep because I loved it. So nostalgia is its own nonfiction shelf for sure. All right. So history, indigenous history. I think we just saw that on the shelf. And then we get to the more like spiritual stuff. Spiritual practice, folklore, cultural foodways, cookbooks. Like no one ever puts cookbooks on their nonfiction list. I don't remember if Hannah did, but where else do they go, right? Like it's about food and how to cook food. So it's a informational delivery of information. Like that's nonfiction, right? And I've got several here. So here's one shelf. We've got everything from Julia Child to like Greek cuisine to homemade foods to river cottage to healing with whole foods. And then we get into the spiritualist stuff with like tarot. And there's another shelf with tarot and folklore and mythology and druids and herbal witchery and that sort of thing, and astrology. And then we go into like food writing and cultural foodways is what I would call it. So this actually, in the beginning, helped a lot with when I was including food in my books because we have old recipes, we have traditional recipes, and I went back to those Scotland books because they provided a lot of detail on like, here's how the farm year was. This is why people had this every morning for breakfast, or not morning, but they went out without breakfast to the fields and came back at like 10 for breakfast. So they were working on an empty stomach. There's some really great cookbooks that give a lot of historical detail if they're historical traditional food cookbooks, which I find fascinating. So we've got some of that here, as well as food writing and like how to use plants. You'll see this one from Petticoat Tales to Arbroath Smokies. So again, traditional foods that helps sort of root, if it's the right time period, root a historical fiction book in a certain place. Of course, I couldn't do Arbroath because I wasn't doing the east coast of Scotland, but you know, you get the idea. And in case anyone is wondering, Petticoat Tales are a type of shortbread. So excellent, excellent. This is the top shelf, which is travel. So most of these I have read. This is travel writing. So I, at one point in my life, wanted to be a travel writer, but it's really not the register that I live in. But these people were authors and writers that I admire. And 1,000 Days in Venice by Marlene de Blasi, she's sticking out there on the left. That's a book I've read several times. It's beautiful. Ina Caro, Frances Mays. And what's the other one on the right? The one about the Murray. It's out of the frame, but like that's another one I go back to. So places I've visited, and you know, like to hear about other people's experience of them because it makes me remember my own experiences, and that's nice. Wait, Yes. Okay. The bottom one here is more herbal plant stuff mixed in with a huge dictionary and coffee when my mom visits, and my card decks and my VHS of Pride and Prejudice. So more cooking, lots more cooking. So you'll see that like the cooking of Japan, the cooking of Germany, the cooking of Italy. This is a series that goes a little bit in depth. Not too much. Like I needed to get those specific books about Scotland to get more actual information, but these provide inspiration, let's say. And I haven't cooked from any of them, but they're eye candy. So I collected them at one point and now I like them as a reference library. And then the last one is food writing and also some more VHS tapes. So you're getting treated to like how I organize my shelves, which is a little embarrassing. Final one is writing craft and translated lit. So here we have the ones that I've read on the shelf and the ones that I haven't on the top with translated lit. Some of them here, some of them in the bedroom, but these are the ones that were visible. So I think that's the last one. Nope. This is okay. Let me catch up with the chat because I think I'm going to be losing people here. Taoism. Yeah, you will not find that book on my shelf. Nope. Atlas of the British Empire, most of the world, basically. Yeah, actually, I saw a TikTok yesterday that said if someone looked into British history and once a week read about a different community that revolted against them, they would have enough for the whole year and into May. So lots of different countries revolted against the British Empire. If you're part of the community, you can, and that's his heritage. So he's talking about his experience being part of that community in Britain, which is a really good book. Cookie book. Don't miss out on the cookies. They're very important. All right. So writing craft, translated lit. All right. Now we're going over my research shelf, which is right behind me here. And this is the top. Let me go back into the app. This is the top shelf. No, the top shelf is the writing list. This is the second one down. We're getting the Victorian cities, which was the intimidating one for me. We're getting Georgiana, which of course is not my era, but for some reason I read it as background and it was fascinating, but also horrifying. Different memoirs. We've got E.P. Thompson. We've got like historical writers here analyzing different periods. Pretty good. Our Tempestuous Day, really good for Regency. The Fatal Shore, also there. The Bank of Scotland history. Yes, there are some very specific books that I sourced and read to be able to tell my recent book. So that's one of them. And then here you'll also see fiction mixed in. So I know this is the nonfiction journey tag, but House on Lowell Street is to tell about Chicago history. Bricks Without Straw, God's Bits of Wood. Those are about slavery and anti-slavery efforts in the southern United States. Out of This Furnace, Sister Carrie, are turn of the 20th century and about labor and antitrust. Lark Rice to Candleford is a really, the dust jacket is not in good shape, but the inside is really pretty. Illustrated version is kind of like Cranford in my mind. It's telling like a little village story, and it gives me lots of visuals for what an English village would be in like 1890s, I suppose, 1900s. So research, here we've got some more labor and antitrust. This was this morning when the sun was coming through my ring light, so you get a fun shadow. More about community resistance, labor and capital, all the really nerdy books about the land bubbles in the US, because I like that theme and I haven't figured out how to make a story out of it yet. So this is sort of like long-term research that I'm keeping. More British stuff that I have read through, but like bits and pieces. Yep. I don't know if anyone has read any of these. If you've seen any of the if you see any books that you have read, shout them out. That'd be fun. And then this is the secretary that's to my left, and this is like the Scottish history stuff. So this is what I pull from for my Remnants series. So memoirs, travelogues, historical things like the Soap Man, and I don't know, just like really broad look at history in Scotland. There's The Year of the French, which is fiction, but I won't understand it because it's too culturally referencing of stuff I don't understand. So I'm still waiting for help. Is that the last one? I think that's the last one. 18. Yes. Okay. So those are all the genres and types that are my favorite niches. And as I said when I gave advice for reading nonfiction, if you don't like any of these niches, you can still like nonfiction because there's a whole bunch of this stuff. Like you could read about cars. You could read about countries that I didn't reference, like South Africa. I don't know anything about South Africa. You could read about medieval ages. You could read about abbots and abbeys and their history. Like there is no end to the stuff that you can read about nonfiction and find fascinating. So don't leave it to me. You can find something that you love. That is my hope for you. And then the final prompt, I believe, is to tag people. So let me see. Tips, favorite works, other booktubers. Yes. And I am tagging, is it 3 people or 4 people? 3. So I was just talking with Amy because we're buddy reading a nonfiction book right now, The Indian Card. So Amy at A-Star Reads is tagged. I will be reading a, which book are we reading? Yes, a nonfiction, No Logo, which Jim has also read. I will be reading No Logo as a buddy read with Anya at Well Traveled Books. So I'm tagging Anya in this tag. And The Linguist Library, Emily Cleary's Pessoa, because I think she'd have really different and interesting nonfiction niches to share with us. So those 3 are who I tag, but feel free to do this if you are interested in showcasing your particular nerdery, because that's what nonfiction is about. Am I right? Yes. Yes, I am right. Okay, so last few announcements. After this, I am leading my Patreon book club for the last time. But if you are curious about the book coming out and want to know about Orla Rafferty Seeks Her Fortune, it's coming out on November 30th, and I will be dropping the cover reveal for the Patreons first. And you don't have to be a paid member, just a member who follows and gets updates. So sign up there at that link, Patreon_MP4. And coming up, I've got a Good Fight Friday this Friday with Leonor Solis. She is a romance author, contemporary romance, and she will be joining me to talk about social change in fiction. She writes mainly about Latin heroes and heroines and plus-size heroines as well. So I'm very excited. I've read 1 book by her, and I'm excited to read more. She's got, I think, a series of 3, perhaps 4, or like 4 forthcoming. And so she'll be coming on the channel this Friday, 5 p.m. Pacific. So do join us for that. And also Tuesday, I'm hosting the AWC updates. So feel free to join to hear about that. Did I miss anything? Did I miss anything? Oh, we have a writer's room coming up. Let me catch up on the chat. Yes, Laura noticed that there are Persephone books there. They are nonfiction. 2 are. 2 are nonfiction. So the Carlyle's at Home is talking about a great writer, historian guy and his house. Sort of a weird book. And then Round About a Pound a Week by Maud Pember Reeves, who is someone who collected data on how much people earned and how much they spent and how they got by in like 1910, 1912 for not the Labor Party. What was the Radical Party at that time? I can't remember, but it was really great in terms of details and prices. If you're looking for prices in 1912, like that book has got you. Like, what did people eat? what was like lunch bread and lard, and there you go, like every day for a week. So like learning the daily things is important for historical fiction. And Persephone has a few nonfiction, and they got you. So there you go. Tiffany was here. Look what I just found, Tiffany. So Eva hasn't come in yet, but Eva noticed that I said my desk was messy. And so I cleaned it up yesterday, and the floor is much cleaner. And there's a piece of furniture missing. I don't know if anyone noticed. I don't think anyone did. But I found I had an envelope with your name on it, and I'm not sure why I didn't send it. But it's pretty good calligraphy. I mean, it's a little ganky, but yeah, just in case next time. Tiffany was doing a book in Affinity, having a terrible time trying to get it right. Is that a formatting software? I don't know. Oh, Nick's here. Haven't seen you live in a while because life came by to smash the like. Thank you, Nick. Nice to see you. Leslie's here. Hello, Leslie. Hola. Laura says, I didn't know they did nonfiction. They do. They do have a few nonfiction, and I have 2 of them. So can recommend. Enjoy the nonfiction discussion. Brian, I don't know if you've already done this tag. You may have. It was like a year ago that Hannah put it out. So I'm very late to the trend, but you can always do it again. So there we go. I've tagged 3 people. Feel free to do the tag if you like. I would love to see you guys on Wednesday for the wrap up, on Tuesday for the AWC updates if you're an author, and on Friday for my chat with Leonor Solis. It should be lovely. And thank you everyone for joining. Go read some nonfiction and diversify that reading list. I hope you enjoy what you're reading next, and I'll talk to you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye.